You have used this word 1,000 times. You use it to describe the middle of nowhere. You use it when your GPS signal dies and the roads turn to dirt. You call it the Boondocks. It sounds uniquely American, doesn't it? It has that country twang, just like backwoods or frontier. But I am going to tell you a secret that most dictionaries bury in the fine print. The word boondocks is not American. It is not British. It is a direct souvenir from a tropical war that history often forgets. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to take you on a journey across 7,000 miles and 100 years. We are going to uncover how a simple Tagalog noun for mountain was stolen, twisted, and repurposed to define the American rural landscape. And stick around because by the second half of this video, I will reveal two other common words, one you used on the playground and one you played with as a toy, that are also secretly Filipino. Once you learn this history, you will never look at a map of rural America the same way again. To understand why you say boondocks, we first have to understand the chaos of 1899. Imagine being a young soldier from the flat plains of Kansas. You have never seen the ocean. You have never left your state. Suddenly, you are shipped across the vast Pacific to fight in the Philippine-American War. You land in a country that is physically terrifying to you. The heat is suffocating, the rain is relentless. And then, there are the mountains. For the Filipino revolutionaries fighting for their independence, the terrain was an ally. They called the mountain bundok. That is B-U-N-D-O-K. In Tagalog, it is a powerful word. The bundok is a fortress. It is the source of water, life, and protection. When the fighting got tough, the revolutionaries would retreat into the boondok because they knew the Americans couldn't follow them there. Now put yourself back in the boots of that American soldier. You ask a local villager where the fighters went. The villager points up at the jagged green peaks and says, "Nasa bundok." They are in the mountain. To your ears, boondok doesn't sound like a geographical feature. It sounds like a threat. It sounds like a place where you get lost. It sounds like the end of the known world. This is the moment the word began to mutate. The soldiers took the sharp Tagalog bundok and softened it with an American drawl. Boondock became boondock. And because the mountains were vast, they made it plural. They called it the Boondocks. At this point in history, the word was purely military slang. If you wrote a letter home in 1902 and you said you were in the Boondocks, you meant you were physically hiking through the jungles of Luzon or the Visayas. It was a specific label for a specific enemy terrain. But how did this military term jump from the jungles of Asia to the suburbs of the United States? That is where the story gets fascinating. Language is like a virus, it needs carriers to spread. The carriers of Boondocks were the returning soldiers and the Thomasites, the American teachers sent to the Philippines. When they returned to the US in the 1910s and 20s, they brought the word home with them. But here is where the semantic shift happens. This is a fancy linguistic term for when a word changes its meaning over time. In the 1920s, if a Marine was stationed at a remote base in Arizona, he would say he was in the Boondocks. He wasn't in the Philippines anymore, but the feeling was the same. It was isolated, it was wild, it was far from civilization. The word was no longer about a specific mountain, it was about the feeling of isolation. Then came World War II. Once again, millions of Americans were deployed to the Pacific. The word was reinforced, it was baked into the military lexicon. By the time the 1940s ended, boondocks had escaped the military bases and entered the civilian household. But the evolution didn't stop there. Later, during the Vietnam War, the word underwent another surgery. Soldiers fighting in the jungles of Vietnam, terrain very similar to the Philippines, needed a shorthand. They chopped the word in half. Boondocks became the boonies. So if you have ever said you are out in the boonies, you are actually speaking a nickname for a nickname of a Tagalog word. You are speaking 3 layers of history in one breath. This proves that language doesn't just describe geography, it describes our relationship to it. To the Filipino, the bundok was home. To the American, the boondocks was the wild other. That anxiety, that fear of the unpaved road, is still hidden inside the word today. When we say someone lives in the boondocks, we usually mean they are unsophisticated or cut off. We are still using the word with the same fear the soldiers had in 1899. Now, earlier I promised you that boondocks wasn't the only word we stole from this period. If boondocks is the word for the landscape, we also took a word for the things that live on us. Let's talk about the playground. Every American child knows about cooties. It is the imaginary germ you get from touching a boy or a girl. You get a cootie shot to protect yourself. It seems like a nonsense word made up by children, right? Wrong. cooties is derived from the Austronesian and Tagalog word kuto. K-U-T-O. Kuto means head lice. When soldiers were trekking through the boondocks, hygiene was difficult. Infestations of lice were common. They learned the local word for the bug, kuto. They Americanized it to cootie. During World War I, cooties was the slang term soldiers used for the lice in the trenches. By the time it reached the schoolyards of America in the 1950s, the actual lice were gone, but the idea of the invisible infection remained. The terrifying kuto became the playful cootie. And there is one more, a toy that you have probably played with, the yo-yo. The toy concept is ancient, existing in Greece and China for millennia, but the word yo-yo? That is widely believed to be Filipino in origin, specifically from the Ilocano language, meaning come or to return. It was a Filipino immigrant named Pedro Flores who started mass manufacturing the toy in California in the 1920s. He used the name from his homeland. He also introduced the key innovation, the looped string, which allowed the toy to sleep at the bottom of the spin. Before the Filipino design, the string was tied to the axle so the toy would just go up and down. The sleeping mechanic, which allows for every cool trick you have ever seen, is a Filipino innovation, just like the name itself. So what does all of this tell us? We started this journey thinking Boondocks was just a slang word for the country. We discovered it was a map of a war. We traced it from the mountains of Luzon to the training camps of the Marines and finally to our everyday vocabulary. We realized that English is a scavenger. It picks up souvenirs from everywhere it goes. It took boondock and made it a place of isolation. It took kuto and made it a playground game. It took yo-yo and created a global craze. The next time you drive out of the city, past the suburbs, until the pavement ends and the trees get thick, when you lose your signal and you tell your friend, "Man, we are really out in the boondocks," I want you to pause. Remember that you are speaking Tagalog. Remember that you are paying accidental tribute to the mountains of the Philippines. And remember that even in the middle of nowhere, you are connected to a history much deeper than you think. This is the power of language. It connects the here and now with the there and then. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history of words, make sure you are following Content Carnival. We have more stories like this coming, including the strange history of the word ketchup. You won't want to miss that. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.